John, how are you? Let's lighten the mood. How's things going with you, John?
I'm tired. I'm exhausted. You guys are making me more exhausted.
I seem to have become the authority on not seeing easy solutions to my problems. So,
is somebody going to tell you about rsync now?
No, I have heard about rsync, and I actually have used it for years, literally years, but that's not the issue. I've been working on an app that I don't particularly want to talk about the specifics on the show, but suffice to say it relates to HealthKit, which already means I'm kind of treading on Underscore's waters, actually, but whatever. So I asked him, hey, is there any way to export HealthKit data and bring it into the simulator? Because I prefer to do most of my development against simulator because it's quicker and easier. So I need a whole bunch of HealthKit data on the simulator. And I was like, man, is there any way to export it and then import it? Is there somewhere on the file system or something like that I can do this? And in the most polite way, which is Underscore's, MO, in the most polite way, he said to me, these are my words, mind you, you friggin' idiot, you can get on iCloud on the simulator. Just join your account on iCloud.
I didn't know you could do that, actually.
Well, I'll see. But I did know that you could do that, but I didn't put two and two together. But this is where it gets really bad, and I shouldn't share this publicly, but here I am. I said to him, but Underscore, here's the thing. I want to be able to, save things to HealthKit, but I don't want them to actually save to, the canonical instance of HealthKit. So in other words, if I save... I don't know, like a workout, which is not actually what this app does. But for the sake of conversation, I save a workout. I don't want it to go to my actual canonical HealthKit, identity, for lack of a better word, or repository. I want that to kind of just live alone on the simulator. So without batting an eye, Underscore says, so sign out of iCloud. I'm so annoyed right now.
Because you're 2 weeks away from having an armful of Apple Watches like Underscore does,
I know, right? But it's this is such an easy solution. Why do I not see these things? Maybe I'm just a really crummy developer and I don't realize it, but oh golly, I don't think I'm an exceptionally great developer, but I didn't think I was that bad of a developer. Why don't I see these things? Why can't I recognize this?
So everyone, hire Casey for your development needs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the trick. That's the ticket right there.
You really do a good job at selling yourself.
This is why I don't want to be an independent consultant.
I love that you keep... I heard your episode of Analog. It was very good. Last episode of Analog where Mike talks you through a lot of this stuff, which I highly suggest everybody listen to, just because it's a good show to begin with, but also if you're interested in our arc of trying to convince Casey to go out on his own somehow. It was a very good episode. And I think and we got this 2,000 word email that it does seem like your heart is not really in consulting. It does seem like you don't really care to do it, right?
And that's the thing.
Then, fine. I'm not gonna push that anymore because to do anything like that, you have to be a little more into it than what you are. So that's probably not going to happen. So okay, I'll stop pushing that button. I do, however, think it's hilarious that you keep trying to trade in these ways that you can immediately get a lot of money for things that take years to build up to a livable wage. I think I'm going to start a YouTube app and making small indie apps. Or YouTube channel, rather, excuse me.
Yeah, that's indie success right there. Guaranteed. Everyone is making money hand over fist in the App Store and on YouTube. There's no way for this to be a disaster.
All right, here's what you do. You get 5 envelopes, and each one you put $5. You mail the top 2 to these people, then you mail out a whole bunch of letters to the other. It's this is never gonna... It's if you started doing these things 10 years ago, you might now have enough to live on.
Exactly.
These are slow buildings, it takes a while.
It's so true. It's so true. I don't know. I don't know. I've been waffling about this. Aaron and I have been talking a lot about this, and I not in an angry way. I'm not upset about it at all. But I don't want to talk about it anymore at this particular moment because I feel like all I've been doing is stressing about it for the last month and a half. But I have such conflicted and mixed thoughts that I don't know what to do. And it's I think your assessment is accurate that the idea of just 1099ing my way through life, that is to say being an independent consultant, there are ways in which I think that would be fun. Let's say for the sake of discussion, I can wave my magic wand and I can have you give me I don't know, between 5 and 10 hours of work a week. I can have Underscore give me 5 to 10 hours of work a week. I can have some of my other independent, app developers like, Jelly, who works on GIF Wrapped, which if you believe in animated GIFs at all, you should have, or, Curtis, who works on Slopes as another example, which if you believe in skiing or snowboarding, you should have that app. If any of these people, if all of you guys, and Underscore, of course, if you guys could each, shave off 5 to 10 hours each, then I could probably make a living. But the idea of just like going out and chasing random people for work and random businesses for work is just the thought of it is extremely tiring. And that's not to say that that's bad or wrong or anything else. It's just, to your point, Marco, I don't think my heart is in chasing work from random people. And I mean that not in a nasty way, just in an observational way.
So, well, I do wonder though, I think the part of that, of the 2,000-word email that we got, that was mostly a little bit off-putting. But the part of it that I thought was interesting and potentially a good path to consider is the part where the author says that, clearly your heart's not in consulting, which I think was true, but that maybe you should consider being like the Swift person, like the person who has a lot of instructional Swift content. Like, now granted, that's a very crowded market. There's a lot of people who have been doing a lot of instructional Swift content for a long time, but you also already have an existing audience of developers, which is pretty good. Like that's a pretty good advantage to start with, and so you do have a bit of an unfair advantage there, which you can use to your advantage. The other thing I would say is, when talking about who you could get consulting work from, don't do like me and Underscore and Curtis. Like we're all indie developers working on indie budgets. Like,
yeah, I know. That's the thing.
Like we're the worst people to have trying to get consulting work for because we can barely afford employees. Like
I think Marco just pre-fired you.
No, I told him I'd give him some hours if he did this, but I'm in a position that most indies are not. And even I couldn't afford you full time.
Although, can I just say publicly that it may be worth, maybe not the money, but worth the experience for both of us to watch me have to slum it in Objective-C land and watch you have to slum it and deal with an employee. Like that would be hilarious on many different levels.
The world's least interesting reality show.
Well, it would be the least interesting, but perhaps most funny.
You get Cards Against Humanity to sponsor it.
Yeah, right. Oh God, can you? But seriously, like I don't let me speak for you, but I have the feeling like even with me, and I like to think I get a little bit of special privilege here. You have no interest in having anyone as like an employee in any capacity. And although I don't have any real angst against Objective-C, I have, let's say I feel like it's a little bit old and a little bit tired.
I mean, that could be said for all of us, right?
Well, that's fair. I just think it would be hilarious.
Some days more than others.
Can you imagine, like, you send me off to work on some bug fix and I, like, rewrite an entire class in Swift and try to pass that? But I wouldn't do that for several different reasons. But just for the sake of discussion, like, I write this entire class, or I rewrite an entire class in Swift. I'm like, here you go, Marco. This is good, right? You just look at this and I'm like, what did you do?
I could just set all this money on fire by making you write unit tests.
Well, I don't know if it'd be setting it on fire. I almost walked into that, you bastard. But you're more right than you are wrong, you big jerk. Oh, goodness. We should get started or / continue with talking about how Siri is all up in front of the show, Daniel Jalkut's business. So who edited this to the show notes? Can you tell me what's going on?
I edited this. Here's the first account I read of, I think, a story that I've heard from a lot of people now as it relates to HomePod. It's that you've got this thing in your house, and unfortunately it has the same trigger phrase as a bunch of other things that you might also have in your house. So once you get past the, being amazed that it can hear you over loud music or whatever, and you just happen to be in your house and you talk to some device that may or may not be your HomePod, and your HomePod decides, oh, I can totally hear you, and I'm gonna take this for you. Hang on, I got it. And Apple has this thing where if multiple devices are around and you say the trigger word, they negotiate amongst each other to figure out who's going to answer. But HomePod will grab a request that it can't handle just to tell you that it can't do that, right? So that it would have worked if it was on your phone, but HomePod grabs it, maybe because it has better microphones or because it takes priority or whatever, and then it grabs it and says, oh yeah, no, I totally can't do that. Sorry about that. So that's not nice behavior, and a lot of people have complained about that. And it's kind of another situation where Apple's had a few of these where like their best customers are more likely to run into these complex problems, right? Apple wants you to have a household of Apple devices. You got Macs and iPads and phones, and everybody should have one, and they should be all over the place. And yet, if you do that, you run into all the situations in which Apple doesn't handle a house full of devices. We've talked before about the, families sharing, iCloud and Photos accounts. Before the family plans for iCloud storage existed, it was a while before Siri could understand different people, and you had to do the training and everything. So now it can distinguish voices. Well, here's another growing pain of the multi-Apple device lifestyle. If you've got multiple things in your house listening for the same trigger phrase, it's great that they negotiate with each other. It's not so great that the negotiation results in the worst possible device answering your question.
I mean, the funny thing is, like, in many ways, this actually rewards you if you're a person who has not gotten into the Hey Siri ecosystem. Like, if you, like me, like, I don't leave it on my phones. I tried it on because I have, like, my iPad that just sits in the kitchen all day for the most part, and I figured, like, maybe I could use that the way I use the Amazon Echo. Like, maybe I could set timers and stuff using Hey Siri on the iPad. And I've tried that, and it's terrible, so I'd never do it. But crap, my development phone just went off.
Well done.
I was like, why are you saying it? See how nicely I said trigger phrase like 9 times? So you're just rattling them off, and now you're being punished.
No, the rule is if Phil Schiller can go on the talk show and say, "Hey Siri," in front of everybody and have nothing go off, then I can do it on a podcast.
But he's got a computerized chip in his throat that masks it so the devices won't pick it up, like the like the Amazon Echo ads in the Super Bowl.
By the way, that's that Amazon Echo method where you cut out the 3 kilohertz thing. I'd play with that. I could not reproduce that. I could not get that to actually work. And that post was like a year old, so I'm guessing it's not a thing.
Well, did you see that? I tweeted something where there was some paper about how you can make basically any spoken phrase be interpreted by a speech recognition engine as any other phrase that you want. You have to know the details of the recognition engine, but of course Amazon does know the details. It was pretty neat. It does. You can notice that it's been modified, like there's noise added, but it's fascinating and terrifying that you can have the audio say anything you want and have the transcription say an entirely different phrase.
Yeah. Anyway, so the point is, like, if you are a HomePod person, you actually have a pretty good reason right now to disable the Hey Dingus feature on as many devices as you can get away with it. Because like if you don't end up using that much, like if you're willing to just hit the button on things, you're way better off having that off on lots of devices, because that way you won't have this problem where the HomePod grabs it when it's actually not the device that either you want or that even can handle the request you're giving it.
Jalkut had a good story too. He uses timers for like a midday meditation, and the HomePod grabbed the please set a timer for whatever, which is fine, whatever, and you can set a timer for me. But unlike the device that he was trying to talk to, was his watch that like taps you when like your time is up, then the HomePod would speak out loud about setting the timer and about when the time went off. It really kind of harshes your mellow when you're trying to meditate. So yeah, that's the intentionality of what you want. Like if you talk to your wrist, despite the fact that the HomePod can hear you just fine and like quote unquote wins the contest and it can support timers, it doesn't understand that you were talking to your wrist. Anyone looking at you would know you were talking to your wrist because they'd see you doing that, but the HomePod can't see you. Maybe it just needs cameras.
Wow. But on a happier note, tell us about the Sonos and wood furniture.
That's not happy. It's sad.
Why is this happy?
But yeah, Sonos and I'm sure lots of other audio and non-audio products that have the same feet made of the same or similar material that like soaks up the oil from the wood and everything can also leave marks. And I think that's terrible. I think that, again, I said on the last show, I understand that it's important to have something vibration absorbing down there for audio performance, but I have to believe there is some substance on the planet that is both squishy and does not absorb oil from wood furniture leaving rings or marks of any kind. So shame on Sonos, shame on Apple, and I believe we have the technology to solve this.
We are sponsored this week by Simple Contacts. Go to simplecontacts.com/ATP and use code ATP for $30 off your lenses. Simple Contacts is a convenient way to renew your contact lens prescription and reorder your contacts from anywhere in minutes. You take a 5-minute vision test from your phone or computer. It gets carefully reviewed by a licensed doctor. You receive a renewed prescription. Then you order your brand of lenses. It's that easy. They have all the brands you're familiar with at great prices, making vision care simple, accessible, and affordable. With Simple Contact, you never have to leave home to get your prescription renewed or to order more contacts. There's no more doctor's offices or waiting rooms, and it's fast. Their vision test is self-guided, and it takes less than 5 minutes. This is way faster than even just making the appointment somewhere. Simple Contact's test uses your camera and microphone to capture the same information as an office visit. And then a licensed ophthalmologist reviews every exam carefully to make sure your eyes look healthy and that your vision hasn't changed from your prior prescription. Although, this is not a replacement for your periodic full eye health exam. Simple Contacts offers all the brands of lenses you're familiar with, including options for astigmatism, multifocal lenses, colored lenses, and more. The exam is only $20. This is much cheaper than a typical eye doctor appointment. Standard shipping is free on the contacts you order, and the contacts are priced very competitively. So check out Simple Contacts today to renew your prescription and reorder your contact lenses in minutes from anywhere at simplecontacts.com/ATP and enter code ATP at checkout to get $30 off your lenses. That's simplecontacts.com/ATP, code ATP for $30 off. Thank you so much to Simple Contacts for sponsoring our show.
Who has a HomePod? Because I know I don't. And that's in no small part because I friggin' hate Siri. Marco?
I do not, although that's in partially small part because I've been traveling, so I wasn't actually anywhere where I could buy one. I have still thought about maybe putting it on the counter. One thing I want to know, actually, I was thinking, like, because I know, like, some of our friends, like Merlin, are very positive about the Echo. Is it the Spot, the little circular one?
I think that's right. Yeah.
I was wondering maybe I could try one of those because the one reason I got the Echo Show for a day and then returned it promptly was that I really would like to see the progress of the timers counting down while cooking. You know, right now I just ask the Echo, hey, timer status, but it's, you know, ideally I could watch them or see them, you know, without having to ask something, have it hear it over the fan on the stove, and then, you know. So anyway, so I was thinking maybe I could get an Echo Spot, put it on the little counter right next to where we cook, and then have the HomePod on like the kind of like transitional counter to the big great room and dining room area where that's where the music should come from. So I thought about that, but I don't know. I still think I want to wait. It just seems like there's so many like 1.0 limitations and little annoyances here and there that people are having. And also, I'm not that hot on Siri, so I think I'm going to wait a little bit. Or until I have a really good reason for Overcast development.
Oh, we can hope. We can hope. How about you, John?
I actually got something before Marco. Mark it on your calendar.
What?
You got the HomePod?
I got a HomePod, yeah.
Just one?
Just one. Which actually, more than one would have been cool. But anyway, I did. I knew I had a place for it. Like, because I put it in the same room that I have my Google Home Mini, which I got for free as part of some other purchase. And of course, you'd never want to play audio on. All right. So there's competition for it in terms of answering questions. And in general, I think I'll probably still ask questions to the Google Home Mini, mostly about who stars in movies that I'm watching on television while I'm watching them. And yes, I know that lots of applications on Apple TV can do that for you. Some of them, like I think the Amazon one, even if you just pause, it will show you like who's on screen right now. So be aware of that. But anyway, I find myself asking questions of the Google Home mostly because force of habit. But I don't really have anything in that room that can play good audio that is always on. I do have okay speakers attached to my TV, but usually that whole receiver and everything is off when someone's not watching TV. So it's nice to have something in there that, you know, it sounds okay and that I can both speak to make it play something and in a pinch AirPlay to. So I subscribe to Apple Music. I tried to do like some family trial thing or whatever. I still assume I will unsubscribe eventually, but I wanted to give it a fair shot to say I want to be able to just speak to the air and have it play music. And it sounds pretty good. No, I didn't put it on a coaster. It is sitting on top of my furniture, but I don't have any nice furniture in my life, period. So I don't have to worry about it. Do I have any? Let me see. My dining room table is okay. But anyway, I don't have any nice furniture for the most part, so I don't have to worry about it leaving rings. It's sitting on top of what I assume is a computer-printed photograph of wood. transfer it onto some kind of aluminum powder covered with plastic dust, crappy piece of furniture that I have. I tried it in a bunch of different positions to see how it would adjust its sound. Couldn't tell much of a difference. I couldn't tell whether it was adjusting its sound or whether it just sounded different because it was in a different place. I do have it kind of near a corner, which I think is not great for boomy bass, but it's really the best place I have for the thing. I got white, mostly because I couldn't decide, and so I asked my son, and he picked white, which I think is a reasonable choice because all the other things are white as well. In terms of filling the room with sound, tell that it's a point source. Like, that's why I mentioned, like, if I get two of them, might be better. Even if it wasn't just stereo, like, I can tell the sound is coming from that part of the room, which of course you expect to be able to tell that. Like, it's not magic, but it is, let's put it this way, it is less enveloping than the 5.1 system that I have on my TV. And it probably sounds better than the 5.1 system, but the 5.1 system surrounds the room. So when I play, we'll find out next year, but most of the times I play music like during Christmas, when you play Christmas music, when you're like decorating the tree or on Christmas Day or whatever, it's nice to have it come from all around, and maybe I'll still do that. But it's in the room. I talked to it. My like out of box experience was not the greatest because you go and you set up the thing and it shows a little picture of the HomePod. You're like, yes, set up, and you go through the whole thing. Everything seems fine, and then you can go to the Home app to control the device or to do something. I don't know. I'd never even launched the Home app. So I launched the Home app, and there's my HomePod that I just set up, and it's just got a big red message on it that says, like, not responding. And it was like that for like 10 minutes. Like, what do you mean not responding? The thing is right there. I'm talking to it. It's working fine. How can you tell me it's not responding? Eventually, it started responding, and I saw you can tap on it to, like, pause the music and tap again to unpause, and right, whatever. And then, like, 15 minutes later, I launched the Home application again to try to pause it from a different room, and there was a little spinner on it, like the little dotted spinner, and the spinner just spun there. And it just spun for like 5 minutes until I closed the Home app. I don't know what the deal with that is. I don't know what its problem was. Seems to work now. Not a great experience. Just one of those kind of like, oh, sometimes Apple stuff doesn't work, you just have to wait. So it was kind of depressing. I did all the experiments everyone else did, turned the volume real loud, talked to it. It's impressive how well it can hear you. I was not impressed with how quickly it executed my commands. It shows the most when you're telling it to stop playing a song, because I do that all the time with the Google Homes I have, because my kids make them play things and I want them to stop immediately, right? So this is probably my most common interaction with any of these devices, to tell it to stop playing whatever audio it's currently playing. And the HomePod will do it, but is a little bit more lag than there is when I'm telling any of the Google devices. The Google devices, like, as soon as I get the word out of my mouth, it's like, boom, the audio cuts off. The HomePod seems like it has to think about it for half a second or so, and I find that a little bit annoying considering it's much more expensive than the other ones. So yeah, no real surprises. The only thing that I didn't anticipate is how angry my children would get when they try to talk to it using the Google's trigger phrase. Right? So they're constantly saying, okay, Google, or whatever, to try to make it do things. Especially, again, if it's in the middle of something and one kid wants to stop it playing audio or play a different one, and they're yelling at it to be. And so the Google thing is answering them at the, trying to play music at the same time. It's like, you have to talk to it, but it's like, why? They don't understand why you would have to use a different phrase. I mean, I guess you can explain like it's not a Google thing or whatever, but that's stupid. So, yeah.
So I have such mixed feelings about this. So we got a letter from Tim Wouters, and Tim said, I see some funny parallels between Apple product launches, even with you guys, with respect to HomePod in your latest episodes. And Tim enumerates a bunch of things, and I'll try to summarize his summary. So when the iPod was released in 2001, it enters an existing market of MP3 players. Oh, there's no wireless, so there's less space in a Nomad. Lame. The iPhone, oh, it's ridiculously expensive. It doesn't have a physical keyboard, no copy paste, no 3G, et cetera, et cetera. HomePod, well, it's ridiculously expensive. It doesn't do multi-room audio. It doesn't do stereo. It doesn't do multi-user. Series is severely limited, et cetera. So Tim's point is, he continues, I'm assuming he continues, every time Apple obliterates critics with its relentless focus on continuous improvement. So in so many words, why isn't HomePod the same thing all over again?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's fair to assume that every Apple product that is kind of weird or iffy or delayed or incomplete 1.0 will, grow up to be an awesome 2.0 or 3.0 or 4.0. Like, the initial iPod was really expensive, and it was pretty limited, especially because it was like Mac only at the time. Like there were reasons to be skeptical of the initial iPod, and that market wasn't really proven yet. Whereas, over time, they did make it great, and it was very successful. The original iPhone was too expensive for a lot of people. That original one did not sell nearly as many as the follow-up models. But, over time, they made the iPhone ridiculously great. I mean, in my opinion, it was pretty great from day one, but they made it more successful and more mass market as time went on. But, like, look at the Apple Watch. The first version of the Apple Watch was barely usable. It was really a pretty mediocre product. It had lots of problems, lots of limitations, lots of weird and bad design choices. They did iterate that over time, but most of that iteration happened with the help of additional hardware generations and a couple of years of software generations. That doesn't mean that we were wrong to criticize the Apple Watch 1.0. The Apple Watch 1.0 needed a lot of criticism. The HomePod, I think, is going to be more like that, although I think it's probably starting from a better place. The HomePod is clearly a 1.0. There's lots of missing features. There's lots of things that are a little bit wonky or don't quite work the way people want them to. But I do expect over time for the HomePod to get significantly better. That doesn't mean that this HomePod will necessarily get better. Like, that might require new hardware. So I think it is fair to criticize this one. And the other side of this is that a lot of the criticism about the HomePod today is about Siri and the limitations of Siri and inferior performance in some areas of Siri. I don't think we can reasonably assume that that's going to get better at the same kind of pace that we're used to seeing Apple products get better with. When you're mainly waiting on like hardware advances, like we need the CPU in this thing to get faster, that's going to happen. That's that's kind of a sure thing to happen. 1 to 2 years after the launch of version 1 of pretty much anything that Apple makes. When you're worried about like the local device software getting better, like Apple's pretty good at local device software. There's some flaws here and there, but they're pretty good at it. But Siri is not new and has gotten better at a glacial pace, and in many ways has the same problems today as it did when it launched like 7 years ago. I don't necessarily think it's a reasonable assumption that the HomePod's flaws that are Siri-related are about to get better or are going to get better in 2 years. I actually don't think that's a safe assumption. I would love for that to be the case, but the track record of Siri so far is pretty slow progress and certain types of things that basically are always problems. I don't see that changing quickly, at least not as a sure thing. So I think it is reasonable to criticize HomePod 1.0 for no one to be making fun of us for criticizing the things that are actually wrong with it today, and also to be a little skeptical of Siri improvements being meaningful that are coming anytime soon.
The funny thing about this is that Siri, or at least my understanding of the implementation of Siri, is one of the few things that Apple could actually tweak on their end without a software update, right? Like they can make tweaks to Siri server side, and they can do that at any time. And obviously that's not a universal thing, but generally speaking, they can make Siri a lot better without having to do any sort of software update locally. And so here's the one place where Apple is most well equipped to make changes. And yet I completely agree with you, Marco, that Siri has gotten potentially even worse than when it was new.
No, it's not worse than it definitely. It started out pretty bad. It definitely is better, and it is getting better, but it's getting better at a very slow pace, and it still is. It gains new abilities. About once a year, which is not frequent enough. It gains like new abilities about once a year, but it is not. It seems like it hit a plateau of reliability like roughly in year 2 or 3, and hasn't really gotten more reliable since then.
Yeah, the point I'm driving at, though, is that it's weird to me that this is the one place where Apple could really, ship fast, ship off, and they don't, and it really bums me out. And oh man, I have so many angry thoughts about Siri that we'll probably get to next that I'm just going to leave for now. But I agree with pretty much everything you just said, John.
So when you read this, I think we got all of it from the email. And so I think this, we didn't leave out any examples. And basically the only 2 examples are iPod and iPhone. And the gist of the email is, why do you doubt Apple? Like, haven't they proven the doubters wrong, right? Doesn't, the last line of history proves you wrong, doesn't it, right? Well, I think to start we have to say whatever logical fallacy or statistical bias that is, you cherry picked. Like it's iPod and iPhone are the two examples. Yes, there's the famous was it Rob Malda of Slashdot? Anyone remember Slashdot?
Yeah,
who said the iPod was no wireless, less space than a Nomad lamp. That's what that quote is, and that lots of people doubted the iPhone, right? Those are like Apple's two biggest products after the Mac. So yeah, you can pick them and say they were doubters. There were doubters for Ping too. That didn't go anywhere. There were doubters for the iPod Hi-Fi that didn't go anywhere. There were doubters for the G4 Cube that, like, if you just pick the ones that end up being smash successes, it can look like, hey, history proves you wrong. But setting that aside, like, so whatever, so you can't use these as examples to anything, but what's different about the HomePod than the successes? What makes it more likely to be more like whatever sort of not so great success than it is to be like the iPod and the iPhone? And I think there is, not to say that this means HomePod is not going to be a success, but I think it probably means that HomePod won't be as huge a success as the iPod and the iPhone. Both of those things came into the market, and they were substantially different than the existing players. Obviously, the iPhone was different. A lot of the criticism was about how it was different. There's no physical keyboard. No one does phones like that. You can't make a phone like this. It doesn't even have 3G. All the phones out there have 3G, and expensive, but like, the iPhone was not just like a Nokia candy bar phone, but with an Apple logo on it, right? It was very, very different. It had things that no other phone in the market had. That's, the software, obviously. No other phone in the market behaved like that. People didn't even think it could possibly be real, right? The iPod was more conventional, but still, it was smaller and more well integrated than the other devices that you could buy that hold lots of songs in them. And the key part about the iPod was that normal people could be successful at the task of taking your music collection and putting it on this device and listening to it. I owned a bunch of pre-iPod solid state music players, and if you remember, they also had pre-iPod hard drive based ones that were the size of a truck, right? Normal people would, if they bought those things at all, which they probably wouldn't, tended to be less successful again. I know it was like my wife was not successful at getting the audio onto her tiny little flash, whatever it was, Samsung or maybe it was Panasonic. I don't even remember. Like there were, or maybe Yamaha. The iPod was different than the others in that it was better in all ways in terms of like size and number of songs that it held. And it was better in all ways related to user interface. And so even though it was very limited and it was Mac only, and it was expensive and it had no wireless and it had less space than a Nomad, which I think was one of the hard drive based players in the market.
Yep.
It had significant advantages. HomePod enters a market already populated by devices that already do more than the HomePod does in exactly the same way that the HomePod intends to do it. They are cylindrically shaped speakers that play audio that you can talk to, right? There is no differentiator for the HomePod except perhaps audio quality. And it's not like there's no competition for audio quality. Sonos has good audio quality, and depending on whose test you look at, even the Google Max thing seems to be so-so, right? So the HomePod comes in with no real differentiator. Like, there's nothing that it does that is different. It's not like everything else has a physical keyboard, and it doesn't. All the other ones require you to touch them, and HomePod lets you talk to it. No, it's exactly the same feature set, and that's why the HomePod's getting slammed, because it comes into a crowded market doing nothing different or better than the competition and not doing many things that the competition does. And like I said, the only thing you could say HomePod has going for it is audio quality. But even audio quality per price, you can get two Sonos Ones versus the HomePod, and two Sonos Ones sound just about as good as the HomePod, with the possible exception of bass, most people say. So that thin edge of like, okay, well, it's the best sounding cylinder that you can talk to, you can get. But on the other side of that coin, you can't talk to it in as many ways as you can talk to these 7 other products, means that it's getting slammed for, I think, legitimate reasons. And it also means that unless something very important changes, it doesn't have the potential to be a breakout hit in the same way the iPhone and the iPod do, because it isn't differentiated enough. Even if it gets better at everything, and it is as good as the Google Home devices at answering your things, and as good as Sonos in audio quality, or whatever, you've just caught up then. Right? Whereas the iPhone is either going to live or die based on the idea that you can have a phone that's all screen. And guess what? It lived, right? And same thing with the iPod. Is the ease of putting music on this thing enough to make up for the high price? Well, it turns out that it was, especially once it came to Windows. The iteration is definitely a thing. But even iteration can't save you entirely, or can't not save you, can't make you wildly successful. Apple TV is a great example. Apple TV came out a long time ago, back when it was called iTV, before Apple learned they couldn't use that name. The original Apple TV was not popular and did not succeed. Other devices came on market and did better than the original Apple TV. Eventually, Apple, caught up and said, we're going to make a little puck-shaped thing, and we're going to do what everyone else is doing. But right now, Apple TV is, its main advantage is that you can play your DRM locked Apple content. But other than that, it has no great differentiator for other, besides media lock-in from all the other, television connected devices, and even some smart TVs can play Netflix just as well as the Apple TV. So they iterated on Apple TV for a long time, and it actually took them essentially 2 tries to even figure out what the correct, features and price were for that type of device. So I think it's not like we're doubting that the HomePod will, be a successful product, but I think it is entirely reasonable to give it all the criticism that I think that it's getting, and I think it's entirely reasonable not to expect it to be a breakout success like the iPod and the iPhone, at least until it comes out with some differentiator. In fact, if it was, it would have, they always say this, if people aren't making fun of you, you're probably not going to be that successful. If it was more differentiated and did something radically different, that would give it probably more potential, because maybe it does. Maybe that weird thing that it's doing that nobody else is doing is going to be the thing that makes it a great success, right? But now you look at it and it's it's not doing anything different than anyone else. It's doing exactly the same stuff, only some of it not as good. And that doesn't spell, massive success. It spells okay success, right? Even the watch, I would say, is much more differentiated, and even the watch has taken a while to get going. But there was really no other smartwatch that had the power and the fashion sense that the Apple Watch did on its introduction. So even that had more potential upside than the HomePod. So I think everyone is lukewarm on the HomePod for valid reasons.
I agree. I mean, it's a fair point. I understand why the email was written. I don't currently see it as the same. And even if HomePod version 7 is the best speaker that has ever been made, I don't think that negates any of the criticisms we have now.
And I'm trying to think of what would be a breakout feature. It's a feature that doesn't already exist in a Google or Amazon or Sonos product that the HomePod could have. Just because I can't think of one doesn't mean there isn't one. There could be one. But nothing Apple has announced, I think, fits that category. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe if the HomeKit stuff ever takes off, Apple could do a better job of integrating all of our light switches and doorbells and whatever than Amazon currently does. But I don't know. And in the meantime, we're all just hoping that HomePod catches up, that its voice stuff ends up being as good as Google and as Amazon. And that it gets all the capabilities that Apple originally advertised for it in terms of having multiple ones and multi-room audio and all the other things that some of its competitors already have.
I want one, but I know I'm going to be disappointed by it. And so that's why I haven't bought one. And plus, it's, what is it, $350, $400? It's enough money that's not an impulse buy to me. And not to say that it is to you two either. Just for me anyway, it's not an impulse buy. And so I just... it's new and shiny, and Apple made it, so that means I should have one. That's the rule. That's what they tell me to do. That's what Uncle Tim tells me to do. And I don't know. I'll probably get one eventually, but sitting here now, I know it's going to disappoint me.
Yeah, I really want the HomePod more. I feel like I'm on Apple's team for pretty much everything else. As much as some people think I'm not, I really am on Apple's team for the most part, and the reason why I sometimes criticize them is because I like them so much and because I think they're better than everyone else in the industry at a lot of stuff. But I really want so badly to love and then buy everything that they make. But I can't. The HomePod is about 70% of the way there for me. I need something else. I need really good AirPlay 2, or I need a reason for Overcast to be developing on it, which might be AirPlay 2 whenever that ships. Or I need a Siri Kit API, just something. Give me something else. Close one of these open checkboxes here that are making it not quite enough for me. ultimately, the thing that could really make it awesome for me is if Siri gets a lot better, and I think we might be waiting a long time for that.
On the audio front, the audio quality, or even just the overall device quality and the integration with the Apple ecosystem, HomePod has the very easy potential to be the audio equivalent of Apple TV, and that there are lots of Apple TV-like devices that you can connect to your television that can play like YouTube and Netflix and Hulu and all this stuff, right? Apple TV is not the only competitor in that market, but a lot of people I know who are in the Apple ecosystem and like fancy Apple stuff, instead of having a Roku or a Fire TV, they have Apple TVs. And why do they have them? Is it because Apple TV is fantastically better than Fire TV and Roku?
Yes.
It's better in ways that Apple nerds care about.
No, trust me, it's better. I mean, I tried maybe what was it 2 years ago when I tried I tried a Roku and a Fire TV because I was frustrated with the Apple TV, and I'll tell you what, the Apple TV drives me crazy. But it's still better than those.
I've used a bunch of them, and I think the difference is not that big. I feel like it's mostly aesthetic. I like some of the other remotes better than the Apple TV remote.
Well, yeah, that isn't hard.
But anyway, an Apple TV is more expensive, but people buy it because it's the Apple-iest one. So HomePod easily could get the market for people who want a cylinder they can talk to that plays audio nicely. And there are people who are in the Apple ecosystem and are willing to pay a little bit more for a nice-looking device that sounds really good. Like, that's the easy market, right? Even if it doesn't do everything that Google Home and Echo do, and setting aside Sonos for now, HomePod for sure should get that entire market, which is not a small market. Like, that's if it can suddenly be as successful as the Apple TV 4K, I think Apple would be okay for that for a 1.0 product, right? And then they can go from there. So I think there is a clear path to okayness for the HomePod, even without improving anything about it, simply because it is nice looking and it sounds good and it's integrated with the Apple ecosystem, and Apple people, like you both just said, like to buy Apple stuff. So I think that's a gimme.
We are sponsored this week by Squarespace. Make your next move. Go to squarespace.com and use offer code ATP to get 10% off your first purchase. Squarespace gives you amazing tools that are incredibly easy to use to make websites. It's that simple. Nobody should be hand coding CMSs anymore for almost anything at all these days. Even I hardly ever do it anymore, and I used to love doing that. But the fact is, Squarespace can give you really beautiful professional websites with incredible features, from simple things like, simple content pages or blogs, all the way up to things like storefronts where you're selling digital or physical goods. You can embed maps and calendars and widgets and news feeds, galleries, all these wonderful image carousels. You can even host podcasts on Squarespace. There's so much for you to do there, and Squarespace's tools make it incredibly easy to set up pretty much whatever website you might need. Whether it's for you or somebody else, I highly suggest trying out Squarespace for whatever website you have to create next. Chances are, I bet if you give it 1 hour, you will get so far, and you will see how great it is with so little effort, you won't go anywhere else, and you'll be almost done. And if somebody's asking you to make a website for them, Squarespace is even better because Squarespace supports it all and hosts it all, so you don't have to do any of that. It's wonderful. So whether it's a site for you or somebody else, check out Squarespace today. Go to squarespace.com and you can start a free trial. When you decide to sign up, make sure to use offer code ATP to get 10% off your first purchase. Make your next move with a wonderful, beautiful website from Squarespace.
Let's talk about Siri. I have thoughts. So this started a couple of weeks ago. I was having a conversation with my friend Jamie Pinkham, and we were talking with a mutual friend of ours, and Jamie had said, Siri is terrible, but I applaud Apple for sticking to their guns in regard to privacy. We all know if they gathered more info on us, it would be better. And I thought, what? He's absolutely right. And maybe the reason I'm so grumpy about Siri is because Apple isn't just forgoing and eschewing. I think that's how you pronounce the word, eschewing, privacy. They're doing what I would want them to do, which is to do the right thing and keep, user privacy at the forefront. And, if their product is a little crummier because of it, then so be it. But then I got thinking about it a little bit more, and it occurred to me, but Siri still sucks for a lot of things that have nothing to do with my data. Like, did I tell the story on the show? I think I did, about asking when the UVA Tech basketball game was. And I'd asked for, like, when is the Cavaliers game on? And it wanted to show me the Cleveland Cavaliers. Okay, fine. And then I asked, like, when is the Hokie game on? And they was like, I don't know. Okay, when are the Hokies and Cavaliers playing each other? They played each other 6 months ago. Here's the score. Okay, what time is the Hokie basketball game? Oh, it's totally tonight at 6:00. Why do you ask? Like, it's just, and that's the thing that's so frustrating. Well, one of the things that's so frustrating to me is that, I think Jamie was right, that in and of itself, things could be a lot better, or Siri would be more knowledgeable if privacy wasn't as big a deal. If so much more of this stuff could be crunched server side, like if my entire calendar was server side, if all of my email was server side, and by that I mean Apple could read all of it. In so many ways, I feel like Siri could be so much better. And I respect Apple. I truly and honestly respect Apple for making their product, by most arguments, worse by not cutting that corner, because I think that's better for me, even though the product on the whole is worse. But can you get, like, an actor's name right? I was in even just basic dictation. So I went for a run yesterday, and it's one point during the run. I have my iPods in. I'm on my Apple Watch with an LTE connection, which I don't know if you've ever heard. I'm a little grumpy about, but here, be that as it may, I'm on my AirPods, Apple Watch. I am panting, to be fair, but I had held down the crown on the Apple Watch so it would listen to me, because I have Hey Siri, or actually Hey Siri doesn't work with the AirPods, but I don't have the double tap to kick on Siri because I prefer to do it differently. I prefer for the double tap to do different things. So I hold down the crown on the watch. I hear the beep beep, and I said something to the effect of, like, remind me to open a 529 savings account for Michaela. And holy God, I wish I had recorded what it had come up with. In the defense of Siri, I was panting. This was like 2/3 of the way through my run. But it came up with, like, something that was barely intelligible. I was able to piece it together after the fact, but it was hilarious how bad the transcription was. And all it was a reminder. Like, this shouldn't, in theory, have been that complex. Then I get home, and I decide I wanted to listen to some probably god-awful music. I don't even remember what it was. And so I'm in front of my garage. I'm on my driveway. My phone was sitting in my kitchen. Now, Marco, you've seen the house, and we are talking 20 feet maybe from basically the garage door to the kitchen. And to be fair, there's a couple of walls, including an exterior wall, between me and my phone. And
probably a lot of Tito's and Velveeta shells and cheese.
Naturally. And so I, said, hey, can you play me the latest album by, Mute Math or something like that? I don't remember exactly what it was. And then I see, hold on. Again, this is on my watch. Now, I have plenty of Wi-Fi coverage at this point, but it appears that's not good enough. Hold on. I'll tap you when I'm ready.
Yeah.
Nope, Siri's not available. Sorry about that. And it's like, come on. Now, maybe that isn't, I guess, strictly speaking, that's not Siri. Like, that's just a general connectivity issue.
Well, I mean, is it? Or is it, like, is it a local failure or a server failure? Either way, it's kind of Siri's problem. Like, if your watch should be connected, like, if it's in an area where it has good coverage, it should be connected.
I mean, I have plenty of LTE, although I did look, and it was not on LTE at the time. I have plenty of LTE, though. So hypothetically, it should have fell back to LTE. I certainly was well within my Wi-Fi coverage. Without question, I was within Wi-Fi coverage. And yet it insists on going, I think, to the phone, because, when I did the swipe up to get the little control center thing, I saw a phone icon in the upper left. And it was insistent on going to the phone, which in and of itself is a first stop. Okay, fine. I'm okay with that. But can you not fall back onto something else? And whatever I was trying to play was something that I had in iTunes Match. So this should have, like, the way I expected it to work is that maybe it would have tried the phone and then given up when it wasn't a strong enough connection or whatever, and then just gone via either Wi-Fi or LTE and asked, Apple, hey, what did Casey just say? Oh, he wants to listen to the latest album by Mute Math. Oh, okay. So does he have anything by, Mute Math in iTunes? Oh, indeed he does. Here's what you should play. And it should work. And it's just, these little failures are happening all the friggin' time. And it's to the point that I feel like I cannot communicate with my phone verbally. I cannot communicate with my phone by typing on my phone because that's become a disaster. So I feel like the only device that I have that I can input any text into with any efficacy is my Mac. And it's driving me insane.
But better hope it's not the MacBook keyboard.
Actually, my C key was a little bit crunchy today. I was not too happy about that. I was able to mash on it and get whatever microscopic speck of dust was in there out of the way. I did not need to worry about grabbing the can of compressed air that, I kid you not, I bought specifically for my MacBook. I hadn't had a can of compressed air in the house in like 10 years.
Right.
But I needed one for the MacBook.
No, I mean, like, I think a lot of the frustration here is like it's like I mentioned, I think last show or maybe it was on my 17-hour talk show last week or whatever it was. I mentioned that that like, you know, when I first got the Amazon Echo, it was, you know, after years of like kind of, you know, passively trying to use Siri and have it fail a lot of the time and just kind of be frustrated by that. It was striking to me how reliable the Amazon Echo was in and how quickly it would answer me. And you know, in part, this is kind of not a straight comparison because the Amazon Echo is stationary, plugged in all the time, listening all the time, for the wake word at least, and is in a controlled environment. It's always in the same spot. And there are, like, you know, acoustic things that can happen. Like, for instance, like I mentioned earlier, like when my range hood fan is on the stove, it creates, like, you know, a good deal of fairly broadband white noise, and the Echo just can't hear anything anymore. Like, even if humans can hear over it just fine, like certain types of noise that are in the room, the Echo just seems to really hear very badly if those noises are present. But otherwise, like, the Echo is pretty reliable. But again, that's because it's in one place, plugged in all the time, listening for the wake word all the time, and has a stable connection. Like, it can remain connected to the network. It doesn't have to power save and drop itself off the Wi-Fi when it's not necessary, stuff like that. So this is not a straight comparison here to your watch situation, which was very possibly affected by connectivity and power saving stuff. But that being said, like, you know, the way the error rates of these things work. Suppose the Echo hears me 95% of the time, and Siri hears me 90% of the time. That still means Siri fails twice as often. And so as you get closer to these higher numbers, you know, it's very same math when you talk about cache hit rates. You know, the same problem of like you know, it seems like when one of my cache servers is down, then about, you know, 8% of hits will miss. But that also means that my databases are then serving like 5 times as many hits because the hit rate is usually so high. So, like, you know, you'll see a huge spike in load on the databases for what seems like a small difference in the cache hit rate. So this is, you know, it's a similar problem here with, like, you know, for Siri to get like competitive and better in this way, it needs to dramatically reduce its error rate and its failure rate. And Apple might think it's really good. If Apple has data on this, which I'm sure they do, you know, they might see it as somewhere being in the 80s or 90s and think that's great. But the competition is even better than that, and the difference can still be seen and felt pretty regularly. I would love so much for Siri to improve at the same rate as Apple's hardware and software usually improves. But it's been here a while, and we haven't seen that. So I don't think anybody should reasonably anticipate that that's going to happen now. Like, all of a sudden, is Siri going to start getting better at a rapid pace? I don't know. Like, they have the HomePod, which depends very heavily on Siri, so you might think that's great motivation. But I think the iPhone for the last 7 years is also pretty good motivation, and they haven't done that. So, you know, it doesn't seem like it's really a core competency of Apple to make really good AI-based big data services like this. And you know, a lot of people lean on the privacy thing, and Apple, to some reason, or to some degree, also kind of leans on the privacy angle, almost as an excuse of why it has to be this way. And I think that's not a valid argument. You know, I think the privacy aspect of the way Apple does things is nice, and there's merit to that. There's value to that. I'm glad they do that. But that does not preclude them from making really good services in this area. It just doesn't. It's two separate things. Yes, if they had more data, if they were more creepy with collecting stuff, certain types of certain services could get better. But Apple makes a lot of services that could get better with what they already have, and they don't, or they don't get better enough. So I don't think that Apple has to give up privacy to make great services. Conversely, I don't think the privacy is the reason their services in some of these areas are not great. I think that's a convenient excuse for people who don't really understand how to make these services very well. But otherwise, that's not the reality. The reality is these services can get way better with the amount of information that they already do or don't collect. I don't think Apple is culturally and structurally set up to make really great services of this type. I think they have proven that.
Yeah, and that's exactly my point when I was bringing up what Jamie had said, is that there's so much that has nothing to do with privacy. Like, okay, fine. Maybe if Siri saw that I was sitting in Virginia when I was asking about two Virginia colleges playing each other, maybe it could have narrowed down a little bit more. But either way, I don't think that would have made a tremendous difference. And okay, even if that would have made a difference, then what happens when I'm using Siri as like a front end to IMDb? Like I think it was John had mentioned earlier, I want to know about who's acting in the movie I'm watching or the TV show I'm watching. Like Siri falls all over its face on that half the time. And that has nothing to do with anything, except I guess if it was listening to what I was watching, which is even creepy enough that I don't think Google does that sort of thing. So, you know what I mean? Like there's so much that has nothing to do with privacy. And this is what I was saying originally, what Marco was saying now, just a moment ago. There's so much that is beyond this. And I just, it's frustrating. And I want to see it get better. And I'm frustrated that it's not getting better, especially since unlike the annual release cycles for macOS and iOS, which we will hopefully talk about this episode, I don't understand why this isn't getting better faster, except perhaps just in Marco, you said this a moment ago, a corporate culture that isn't conducive to it.
I think to generalize this from Siri specifically to these voice assistants in general, this is just to reiterate what Marco just said and what he's said on this topic many times, and I think what we've all talked about in the past. I think it's actually analogous to the iPhone, which I'm thinking about because we had that earlier feedback about it. That it's Marco talked about the percentage differences and the gaps, and like so if the competing products are this good and Siri is that good, even if Siri is improving, there's still a gap between it. But I think the important part of those hypothetical numbers is that, like the original iPhone, there's a threshold on one side. The same interface is not acceptable. And on the other side of that threshold, you pass into the realm of acceptability. The iPhone was one of the first mass market devices to cross that threshold for touch input on a screen. The touchscreens which existed forever and people generally hated, suddenly got responsive enough that it wasn't just like, oh, this is like 1% better. It crossed over a line, right? And suddenly it was good enough. And they've gotten way better since then, right? But it was so clear that this is the first device that is good enough that regular people will use the touchscreen and not just find, they won't hate it. It'll feel good. It'll feel right. It'll feel like they're directly manipulating the things on the screen, right? For the cylinders that you talk to, the essential that there is the same line, and Amazon crossed it a long time ago. And there's a couple of aspects. One is it's got to hear you, right? Two is it has to know what the hell you're asking about. And three is it has to do it fast, right? And the combination of those three things produces a feedback cycle for people who use the Echo that builds confidence. The first time you use it, you're impressed that it even understood what you mumbled. Then you're impressed that it did, like it could do the thing that you asked for. And then I think with the Echo, you're impressed that it did it so quickly. Like you feel like you barely had the words out of your mouth and it's setting your timer or doing whatever or telling you what time it is or telling you the weather. It just seems so fast. And when that happens, the threshold that it crosses is like the utility threshold of like, this is an appliance and it's no longer a computer thing where I just, cross my fingers and hope that something cool and computery works. It just becomes part of your day, right? Even if it has limitations like, oh, I just know it can't hear me with the range hood on, right? There's parameters to it. If you know that's the case, that's bad, and Amazon should improve that. But it's not like on some days when it's raining, it can't hear me, and then on Thursdays, sometimes it doesn't hear me. Like you cross that threshold where it becomes reliable. And there are so many things that we can talk to including Siri and lots of other things that have some kind of voice interface, that do not cross that threshold. And so you give up on them. You don't use them, or you use them for an extremely narrow, set of things in particular circumstances. Now, I think the HomePod has actually crossed some of those thresholds for Apple. I think the HomePod can hear me really, really well. It may be able to hear me better than any other device on the market. Not better enough, perhaps, to make a difference, because in general, I'm still amazed at how well the Google Home can hear me. And I've seen other people talk to their Echoes from far distances, and it seems to work pretty well. But the HomePod, I think, crosses the threshold for can it hear me. It does not cross the threshold for does it understand what I'm asking for, because still many times it will neither not do what I think it should do, or the same command will get different results. And it also, I think, doesn't cross the threshold, as I mentioned before, for responding quickly enough. When I tell it to stop playing music, I know it hears me, I know it understands what I want to do, and it does it, but it does it a little bit more slowly than I would like. Slowly enough that it gives me that millisecond of doubt whether it's doing it. It doesn't create that feedback cycle where I'm like, oh, now I feel like I have a voice connection to an off switch, right? In the same way that whenever Marco says, like, turn everything off and is downstairs, that it turns everything off, and you get used to it doing that right then. You don't expect it to have like a little spinner light going spin, 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 spin. Okay, I'll turn off your lights. That's too long. That doesn't create the feedback cycle. So I'm not sure exactly what values those lines are at, but I can tell that certain devices are over it and certain devices are not. And I think HomePod, with the advancement of its audio output and input, has crossed over a bunch of those lines, but it's still a couple things lag behind. And you really got to get everything over the line, kind of like the original iPhone did, to sort of enter the game, to enter the realm of devices that regular people will use routinely day after day and stop thinking about as a tech gadget and start thinking about as an appliance that you just expect to work all the time.
Yeah, we're a long way from there, unfortunately.
But not for the other cylinders, Casey. You should get a Google Home or an Amazon Echo.
I actually have an Amazon Echo on its way to me right now.
Really? Wait, what? Talk about bury the lead.
Actually, yes. So a friend of mine, Justin Williams, who you might know from Glassboard, among other things, he was getting rid of his Echo and said to me, rather than trying to figure out, who to sell it to, if I covered postage, he would send it my way. And so I Apple Pay cashed him the cost to send it from him to me, and it'll be here sometime next week. Probably after we record, actually, so you're not going to hear any more about this for a couple of weeks at least. I still don't have any particular interest in having an Echo in my house, but since almost everyone I know has one and almost everyone I know loves them, I'm curious to see what will happen with it. But
put it in your kitchen and start asking it kitchen questions, or put it in your TV room and start asking it TV questions. By the way, I did test the HomePod on TV questions. I asked it who's the star of a movie that's out now, and I asked it when a movie was released, and I did both of them in just the first way that occurred to me. This is questions that I have a good comparison to, because I ask my Google things all the time. For the who stars in the movie, it more or less got it. It basically read me a web page, but it read me the relevant portion of the web page, and it read me like 7 of the people that are in the movie, and then asked me if I want to read the next 2 as well. So it didn't get like who the star was. I think there's an obvious answer, like one person, but it read the cast. It didn't read me the title and the rating. So I give it that one, but it definitely sounded like I found this on the web about blah, 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 which is not as direct as when I asked the question of Google and just tells me straight up. I asked it the release date, and it was verbose about it. It said the movie XYZ was released on, January 12th, blah, 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 but it got the right answer. So I don't know if HomePod has gotten better about that than Siri. Mostly I'm just enjoying the fact that I find it so much more reliably able to hear me. I hate using Siri. I don't have my watch. I don't wear my watch most of the time, but I hate using Siri on my phone because I activate it and I never know when it's safe for me to start talking. And almost all the time I hold down the home button and like the little Siri thing appears on the screen and I say whatever I want to say, right? And I see the little waveform move, and while I'm talking it goes boop.
Yep, that is exactly me.
And then I'm like, well, maybe it heard me anyway. So I finish what I'm saying, and it just stares at me, and it says, "How can I help you?" You moved your waveform in response to my speaking. It's clear that the audio was entering into the system and jiggling, but And so I always have to end up saying everything twice, and I hate that. It makes me feel dumb, and it's not a good interaction. If I wait for the bloop, I feel like I'm waiting there forever. Now is it okay for me to talk? It's the worst. Talking to a cylinder is so much better. I don't care if it's ready for me. I just start talking. And the HomePod definitely passes that test. Not once did it not hear me. Not once did it, bloop at me or do anything or interrupt me in any way. I was able to say what I wanted to say, and it was able to do what I wanted it to do. So, like I said, I think HomePod definitely crosses some thresholds that previously hadn't been crossed by any Apple product.
We are sponsored this week by Betterment. Rethink what your money can do. Visit betterment.com/ATP for more information. Betterment is the largest independent online financial advisor designed to help improve your long-term returns and lower your taxes for retirement planning, building wealth, and your other financial goals. Betterment takes advanced investment strategies and uses technology to deliver them to more than 300,000 customers. Betterment takes the information you give them and makes tailored recommendations for how much to invest, how much risk you want to take on, and the types of investments accounts that you should have. Features like Betterment's socially responsible investing portfolio give you the flexibility to do things like reduce your investment in companies that don't meet certain social, environmental, and governance benchmarks. And Betterment's experts have your back. They believe you should be able to get financial advice anytime, anywhere. So all Betterment customers can receive advice from their team of licensed financial experts through the Betterment mobile app's messaging feature. And Betterment is a fiduciary. This means they don't get commissions for recommending funds, and they don't have any funds of their own. They only do what they believe is right for you. And all of this is brought to you with very low, transparent fees compared to traditional services. Betterment's regular profile is only a 0.25% annual fee. This includes unlimited messaging access to their team of licensed financial experts. And if you have a more complex situation, Betterment Premium gives you unlimited phone call access to certified financial planners for only 0.4% annually. Investing involves risk. Listeners can get up to 1 year managed free. For more information, visit betterment.com/ATP. That's betterment.com/ATP. Betterment, rethink what your money can do.
We got word, not us three specifically, just in general, there was word spread a couple of weeks ago, I think, that Apple is going to pull a snow leopard, but for real this time. Like, we really mean it this time. For realsies. Pinky swear. There's an article in Bloomberg that said Apple is going to kind of pump the brakes. And it's going to, well, the headline is How Apple Plans to Root Out Bugs and Revamp iPhone Software. So there's a quote that one of you pulled for my convenience, so thank you. Quote, instead of keeping engineers on a relentless annual schedule and cramming features into a single update, Apple will start focusing on the next 2 years of updates for its iPhone and iPad operating system. According to people familiar with the change, the company will continue to update its software annually, but internally, engineers will have more discretion to push back features that aren't as polished to the following year. I don't know where to start with this, other than to say that if this really is true, sitting here now anyway, this sounds magical. This sounds like, the glass of ice water in hell. In that, not to say that things are that bad by any stretch, but what I mean is I really think that Apple could stand to kind of pump the brakes on new features and just work on hardening things. And I think that the three of us are amongst many voices that have been saying the same. And when we were doing Jason Snell's end of year recap in survey or whatever he called it, we'll put a link in the show notes. One of the things that struck me as I was reflecting on some of the things he'd asked about, like software quality, is that over the past year, during 2017, I had a lot of my family members. And, so most of my friends are kind of pretty big nerds, but most of my family members are not. And I had some family members say to me in so many words, holy crap, this Apple stuff never works anymore. What happened to it just working? And that really struck me. And I mentioned that to Jason. And I think he actually used that in the report card. And it seems like it's time, the perception anyway, whether or not it's reality, the perception is, and I'm very much in this camp, that software quality is really kind of taking a turn for the worse. So it's easy to blame the relentless speed of new features for maybe that being the problem. Maybe it's just that they need to not have a litany of new features to release every WWDC. So perhaps slowing down on new and shiny will give everyone time to improve the old and, well, busted. But I don't know. It's hard because I've worked in big software companies, but not quite this big. John, you can be the adult in the room as you always are, so I'll come to you after I ask Marco. Marco, how do you feel about this?
First, let's have the children discuss it.
Exactly. You and me are at the kiddie table at Thanksgiving, so let's talk amongst ourselves.
Mark already talked about this for an hour on another podcast.
I haven't had the time to listen to that.
No one has the time to listen to that.
Well, I was trying to figure out a way to make that joke, so thank you. All right. So anyway, can you give us the chief summarizer in chief version then of that argument?
Yeah, basically, this is great to hear. I'm happy that this, this seems like it has multiple sources and everything. It probably happened, this meeting or this change, but I don't think it really means much of anything yet. It's very much a like, okay, that sounds promising. Let's see what happens. Let's wait and see what the actual results of this are. I do think that the annual schedule of heavy feature-filled releases on almost all of their platforms has been a significant contributor to the recent quality issues. I don't think I think from the little bit we've heard here and there, it really does seem like they don't devote enough time to bug fixing and refinement before the engineers on most of these projects have to go to the next thing. Like have to build the next marketing features, build the next headlining features, or get to the next major version. Like there's not a lot of time in an annual cycle for refinement and bug fixes. And so, if indeed they are moving to a 2-year cycle for major efforts, and this isn't saying that they're going to only release iOS every 2 years or whatever. It's just major features will now be allowed to take 2 years. That sounds good. I don't know how different that is from how it has been, though. I mean, we know, certain things like APFS, that didn't take 1 year. That was major features have always been allowed to take more than a year. So I don't know what exactly this is allegedly changing, and I think we're not really going to know whether it's working or whether it's having a real effect for probably a couple of years. We're going to have to just see how the software evolved over the next couple of years and kind of see, does it seem better now or not?
Yeah, I've been in a lot of big software companies, and over the years I've seen... I can't speak to what it's like inside Apple, but I have to think that it's not so incredibly different from other large companies, especially these days. And a thing that happens in companies that do stuff with software or technology in general, and probably in any company, is that the higher you go up the management chain, the more the incentives are structured for those people to make it seem like things are going well and to themselves believe that things are going well. But eventually, something will happen that ripples all the way up the entire org chart. Me from down at the bottom of the org chart, I always saw those unfortunate things that happened as opportunities that must be seized upon by those in the lower ranks, because that's your chance to say, you people higher up have thought everything's been great, but we've been down here telling you that X is really a problem, and now those chickens are come home to roost. So let's come together and have a discussion about how we're going to change things, right? And this cycle just repeats itself. It never actually fixes all your problems, but basically, you gather together, you say we're going to change how we do things in a way that will prevent things like this from happening, and you do it. You make the actual change. You change procedures. You reorganize people. You change priorities. You do, almost exactly the same things you talked about here. Lengthen schedules, give people who are closer to the actual work more authority to push back on deadlines. Right? You stop setting unrealistic internal deadlines just so some middle manager can get a bonus this year. You do all that stuff, right? And it works. It's not like it doesn't work. It works. You make things better. There are the countervailing forces of things slowing down and everything also happen, but then it just builds back up again, and you get into a happy place again, and then again the same incentive structures cause people to press hard and set aggressive internal deadlines, and fear of competition makes you add lots of features, and so on and so forth, and you get it, and then another crisis happens and people seize on it. And I feel like this is just the cycle of any large group of people doing things. And that's not to say, I'm not trying to be cynical about it. I agree with Marco and almost everyone else who's looked at this is yes, this is exactly what we want Apple to do. And I really believe that they're really going to do it, and B, that it will really help, right? I think this same cycle has happened inside Apple many times in the past, and it will happen many times in the future. And I just think we're kind of in like a downswing that hopefully is about to take a turn into an upswing. So I see it as positive, and like there's an entire industry around like how to not go through this, roller coaster cycle, and how to, get sustainable growth and just do great things forever and ever. And it's just a constant struggle to get any large group of people to do that. Maybe Apple, that's another topic we won't get to today, but like, people have rose-colored glasses about whatever they think the heyday of Apple was and how well it was able to execute during those times. And I think we will talk about that on a future show. But in general, this quality focus thing, I think is positive, real, and will have real results. But we'll find ourselves back here in about 10 years at minimum, or at maximum rather. And that's just the nature of the beast. And we just need to learn to ride it out. So I'm optimistic. I keep saying I'm optimistic until I see what they do with the Mac Pro, because if they disappoint me there, it will really crush me. But I think I may be unique in that regard.
Well, but the Mac Pro is actually a really good thing to mention here. It's like they told us directly, like officially on the record, that they're working on a great new Mac Pro. That our Mac Pro problem will be solved. And honestly, half of us, I think our Mac Pro problem was solved by the iMac Pro. It's pretty great. But but for like the modular upgradable tower or modular upgradable Mac Pro, I don't know if it's going to be a tower, that's still a giant unknown. They said they promised it will be better, but until it actually comes out, we don't know that it will be better. And so it's like, great. That was great talk to get, but we haven't seen the actions yet. So we can't really say whether that's, an actual positive thing or not.
And this one more minor point on this, and we've talked about this in the past as well, particularly for the Mac, where like the phone, obviously they're still doing great in the phone, and they have fierce competition in the phone, right? So I bet they're going to still be running pretty hard on the phone front. And so far they have been running hard. They've been shipping good phones, so good on them, right? It's obviously the highest priority to do a good job on it. I don't expect that to change that much. The OS that runs in the phone, they push features out here and there. I think they don't feel as much pressure from the competition as they did back when they had really, back when Android was just so far ahead of them in terms of notifications and stuff and multitasking and stuff like that. I think that, it's a closer race now. But the Mac, the fantasy opportunity that the low-level engineers would love to seize upon is like, boy, imagine if we could have, sets of people permanently responsible for every important part of the system, and those people just sat there and drained their bug queues and like improve performance and test coverage and drain their bug queues for like 3 years. And why would you do that? How can you afford to do that? Because the Mac's competition is not moving as fast as the phones and the tablets competition, right? Not as much action is happening down there. And if you're trying to try to find a role for the Mac in the company, one possibility, as we discussed in shows in the past, is to make it the super reliable, bulletproof, industrial grade, never crashes, never does the wrong thing, just does what it's supposed to do reliably. Make that the reputation of the Mac. Make it seem, you're in exchange for boringness and for a slightly slower or perhaps, much slower rate of change, you get massive reliability. So staff up the Mac teams, drain those bug queues, improve your test coverage, improve performance and memory usage and all those type of things. This is assuming there's no major components that still need to be rewritten, because there may still be things lurking in there. And then do that for a couple of years to restore the Mac's reputation and to make it more attractive to the people who are most likely to use the Mac before you go on to the next cycle, whatever that is, the marzipan thing. And now it's time for the Mac to take its next evolution, time to get radical again. I don't think that will happen, but that is one way that, we're the people who seized on this opportunity able to really seize on it. I'm sure that's the dream of lots of low-level people who work on the Mac and who are sick of ignoring your bugs just as you are sick of them ignoring them.
I mean, this is definitely a good thing. I don't see any way we can spin it as a bad thing. But fast forward to, what episode are we on? Like 265. Fast forward to episode, 310, and we'll see what we think. But no, I'm excited about this. As much as I'm joking around, I'm really excited about this. I think this is a good sign that Apple is seeing what we're seeing. And it's also tough, too, because, we don't get to see all the, like, I don't know if analytics is the right word for it, but like the analytics data that Apple sees. And they may see that hard crashes in software are trending down over the years. And I think that very well could be true, but it seems to me that it's the kind of wiggly stuff that's really been letting us down lately. Like Siri just not working when you want it to, for example, let alone just, answering the question incorrectly. I don't know. It's tough. And I don't know what to make of it, but Steven Sinofsky, is that how you pronounce it? I think something like that, wrote a tweet storm about this, and we'll put a link to either the tweet storm or he eventually wrote a blog post about it. We'll put some sort of link in the show notes. But I wanted to call out a few tweets of his. He was a Microsoft engineer and headed up a lot of their bigger software products, if not most of software. I don't know exactly where he was when he left Microsoft, but suffice to say, the guy knows what he's talking about, and he knows what he's talking about when it comes to delivering software to lots and lots and lots of people. And so in some of the tweets he wrote, and this is tweet number 28 of his tweet storm, no one ever anywhere has delivered a general purpose piece of software and hardware at scale to 1 billion people, delivering such a broad, robust, consistent experience. We don't have a measure for what it means to be, quote, high quality, quote. I can say that in any absolute sense, Apple has exceeded everyone else. And that's kind of what I'm talking about, right? Like, it may be that really software quality is good. It's getting better, but it's in terms of crashes, perhaps. And we've talked about this more than once on the show, but maybe it's getting worse in some of the kind of gray area that's harder to track. Stephen continues in tweet 31. But what happens to a team as complexity evolves is simply the challenge of coordination and, more importantly, consistency or leveling of decisions across a complex system. This is particularly acute if the bulk of the team has only known the previous few years of success. He continues in 32. So Apple will just renew the engineering process. It means thinking about how risk is analyzed, how schedules are constructed, how priorities are set. This is literally what it means to run a project and what we are all paying them to do. So in conclusion, to me on Apple, this is Stephen, to me on Apple, even as an outsider, I feel confident saying that this isn't reactionary or a crisis or a response to externalities. Importantly, it isn't a massive pivot or a student body left. It's a methodical and predictable evolution of an extremely robust and proven system. So the short version is, hey, when you have a lot of people writing a lot of code for a lot of different systems, every once in a while, just like John said, you're going to have to sit back and take stock and say, we got to tweak a few things. And that's what they're doing.
I think what Sinofsky missed is the cyclic nature of this. Like that, yes, this is a totally routine thing that happens, and that it happens repeatedly. Like I don't know. Again, that forms a kind of a roller coaster that people don't like. They'd rather see just like a gentle slope from with constant improvement. I've never seen that happen in the real world. But the cyclic nature of it can make you jaded if you are a long-time employee or a long-time engineer and be like, yeah, this always happens or whatever, but that the problems just come back. I think that's true, but it's better if you don't do the up and down roller coaster. It just becomes a down roller coaster that just goes down forever, and you never do make that adjustment. So I fully believe that these type of adjustments have gone on at Apple for the entire life of the company and will continue to go on, and you just have to roll with it. But I'm ready for an upswing. I think everyone is.
Yep, big time. Barton Meeks writes in, do you think the modular Mac Pro will provide a solution to a Mac Mini update at a reasonable price?
Nope.
Alistair Campbell writes in, you've alluded to a negative effect of running movies at the wrong frame rate, but I must have missed the original explanation. I'm wondering if it is better to handbrake Blu-rays at 24 or 30 frames per second. What's the good digital backup for you? And John, you seem to be the most opinionated about this, so do you want to take this one?
So the negative effect of running things at the wrong frame rate is that they're not nice multiples of each other. It has to show frames for different amounts of time. The video content we have expects you to show every frame for an equal amount of time, whether it's 1/30th of a second or 1/24th of a second or whatever. If you show some frames longer than you show other frames, it can make motion look stuttery because it's like long, short, long, whatever. It doesn't. You might not notice in lots of still images, and maybe you don't notice that much in motion, but it doesn't quite look right. So that is the negative effect. You don't want that. Asking whether it's better to handbrake to encode Blu-rays at 24 or 30, you should encode them at whatever the frame rate of the original source material is. So if it's a TV show and it's at 29.97 whatever, encode it at that frame rate. If it's a movie and it's at 24, encode it at that frame rate. Don't do any kind of conversion. Whatever the source frame rate is, keep that. And what's a good digital backup? I'm assuming you mean like take it off of your plastic discs and put it somewhere. you have to just rip the data exactly as is. No transcoding, no anything. If you really want to have a digital backup, use something like MakeMKV or whatever to just pull the bits off the disk exactly as is with no conversion of format whatsoever. And that is the only digital backup that you can have of stuff like this. The best digital backup is perhaps to buy all these things in the cloud, and then you don't have to worry about storing them, but then you have to worry about the company going out of business and you having no way to watch that stuff anymore, which leads us into our next question.
The next question is from Benjamin Esham. John, you've mentioned that you prefer ebooks to paper books. How do you deal with DRM slowly making your ebooks inaccessible over time? Benjamin continues, I quote-unquote own a couple of Palm Digital Media books that I'll never be able to read again.
So this is tricky. There was a lot of churn in the ebook business early on. Some people who made and sold ebooks no longer do so. I worked for Palm Digital Media back when we had the largest ebook store in the world, if you can believe it. This is before Amazon entered the game. And many things went wrong there. But anyway, they were DRM encumbered, and if you purchased them from the store, you could read them in an application that was ported to all sorts of different platforms. So eventually Palm went down the drain, and the business of selling ebooks went down the drain with it, more or less. And eventually you get to the point where the iOS reader application, which existed for many years, doesn't even launch anymore. I think it's probably because it's 32-bit these days. So you've got these DRM encumbered ebooks that you quote unquote own that you can no longer read, or that you can only read on a really old Mac that can still run the old reader software or whatever. So what to do? How do you deal with that? I do still prefer ebooks just for the convenience or whatever. I understand the limitations they provide, but I think the convenience is worth it for me. In general, these days, if you're buying ebooks from one of the modern vendors, most of them, there's some shady way for you to crack their DRM and to make them unencumbered. So you're still stuck with the format. You can convert them to EPUB or whatever, but 50 years from now, you want to read your EPUBs, and we have nothing that can read EPUBs. HTML died in the, the fire of the nuclear Armageddon or whatever. Who knows? Who knows? You won't be able to read your EPUBs. So the point is, it's not DRM encumbered. At least you're only limited by the format. For Palm Digital Media books specifically, I don't know if there's a way to crack them. You can try the application Calibre, which I think is used to crack a whole bunch of the Amazon stuff with certain plugins or whatever. But Palm Digital Media ebooks were originally encrypted with your credit card number that you used to buy them. And if you don't know the credit card number, with modern computing hardware, I can tell you that it should be feasible to brute force crack them. But I don't know, because this was a long time ago, I don't know of any actual application that understands enough about the DRM to actually brute force it. But I believe that you could, in a reasonable amount of time, literally brute force crack it. It's much easier if you just know your credit card number. The Palm ebook format was actually very simple. So if you can get the data out, you can easily convert it to EPUB or some other more modern format. I know that doesn't help too much. I'm sure I myself have some purchased Palm Digital Media ebooks and Peanut Press ebooks that I can no longer read. But in most cases, I also have those books in EPUB from a different source, and also in paper sitting to the right of me right here. So if you're really worried about it, buy the paper copy and don't keep them in a basement that'll flood, because you'll lose your paper books that way.
Not that you'd know.
No.
Thanks to our sponsors this week, Betterment, Squarespace, and Simple Contact. And we will talk to you next week.
Now the show is over. They didn't even mean to begin, 'cause it was accidental. Oh, it was accidental. John didn't do any research. Marco and Casey wouldn't let him, 'cause it was accidental. Oh, it was accidental. And you can find the show notes at atp.fm. And if you're into Twitter, you can follow them at CASEYLISS. So that's Casey Liss, MARCOARMENT, Marco Arment, SIRAC, USA Syracuse. It's accidental. They didn't mean to. Accidental. Tech podcast so long.
I don't know what made me think of this, to be honest, but obviously I've been going back and forth about, if I'm going to buy a car, which I'm not convinced I am actually, what should I buy? Should I get a Jeep Wrangler? Should I get a Golf R? Should I get something else entirely, a new BMW, etc.? And it occurred to me that I think to me, or to some degree I am as well, but particularly you two have pigeonholed yourselves into specific, kinds of cars. Marco, you've basically said that until something dramatic changes, you're going to be a Tesla owner until the end of time. John, unless something dramatic changes, like, money raining from the skies right over your house, you seem to be an Accord guy for at least the foreseeable future. So I have for each of you a question, and I'll start with Marco. If you couldn't buy a Tesla, and I'll even broaden it to, if you couldn't buy an electric car, and you've made it very plain that that's what you prefer, but if you couldn't buy an electric car, just out of curiosity, what would you buy?
So I saw this in the notes earlier. I've been thinking about it this evening, and unfortunately, I don't really know enough about like what cars are available these days to have a great answer here.
What has happened to you?
But I'll tell you, very high on the list would be the new M5, because, even though it doesn't have a transmission I would like, I really enjoy having a fast, large sedan. Now, there's lots of options within that, Obviously, and I should probably list in this list something from like Mercedes or Porsche or something, but I just don't know their lineups at all. Audi might be somewhere on the list, because honestly, one thing I really enjoy about the Tesla that I didn't expect to enjoy as much as I do is having the nice big hatchback trunk. And so I know like the Audi A7 is kind of similar in like size and trunk nature,
and also hideous.
Yes, it's pretty bad looking. So yeah, like I don't know, but
I still like it. I think the A7 looks great.
Oh, you're so wrong.
I would probably at least give that like a look, just to see if I could tolerate it, because I do like having a large, fast sedan that is also a hatchback, without being a wagon or an SUV or a crossover. So that's great. So yeah, probably on the list would be, maybe look at the A7, maybe look at the new M5. I would probably look at whatever Mercedes offered in the same thing. I also might just consider a regular 5 Series, like a 550 or even whatever the 540 is these days. I might look at those, because the M5 was a fun time in my life, but I have now grown to appreciate the value of a quiet car. I like having a quiet car that is also fast. I feel like I don't need to shout to the world how fast my car is with noise. But ultimately, when I drive other cars now, like I went on a trip, which is why we're a couple days late. And on the trip, I rented a Nissan Maxima, and it was a perfectly nice car. It had lots of great features, lots of nice little luxuries inside. I'm very happy I rented it because we were somewhere very cold, and it was nice having the heated seats. But it just feels like going so far backwards to both have a gas car and to have some like little entertainment system on like a 6-inch screen with like, running basically DOS. Like that's how these systems all feel to me. And when I occasionally have to drive Tiff's car, which is a modern BMW 3 Series, it doesn't feel modern to me anymore. Like it feels old. Like using iDrive, everything about a gas car with like, starting it up, putting it in gear, and having to remember like actually like turn it off and lock it.
Like an animal.
Yeah, like it's it just doesn't feel great to me. So I think if I had to get a gas car again, I might actually go lower end than like an M5 or something, because I don't get the enjoyment out of that anymore that I used to. Like it's almost it's like, well, I was going to say it's like, getting back with your high school girlfriend, but I don't really have any basis on which to say that, because I never really had girlfriends in high school because I was just terrible at everything. But like, it's like I've moved past that in my life now. Like I had a great time with loud, fast cars, but now I'm perfectly happy with quiet, boring, more comfortable cars that also happen to be fast. So I would probably just get something fast, but not too ridiculous. So that's why I'm thinking maybe like a 550 or something like that.
Fair enough. I want to hate the new M5 because it does use the ZF8 speed, if I'm not mistaken, which is very good. But I can't believe the M5 can't be had with a stick anymore. But oh my word, all the initial reviews of the new M5, 0 to 60 in like between 2.8 and 3.2 seconds, depending on who you ask. Like it's 90 million pounds full size sedan going to 60 in 3 seconds. Like I probably have mentioned this on the show 44 times, but when I was a kid and really getting into cars, I remember that like having a 0 to 60 time in the 4-second range was like Lamborghini and Ferrari territory. Like nobody could get to 60 in 4 seconds. And here it is, this M5 will do it in maybe 2, worst case, low 3s. Like, yeah, God, it's just bananas.
Well, I'll tell you what, like, maybe one other direction that I might want to go is like, if I can't get my nice big comfort boat from space, like maybe if Tiff's car could become the family car that can hold a lot and be big, then maybe I would do something that electric currently is not very good at. I'd get something small and light and fast and fun. So, maybe something like an M2 or like a Cayman or, something like that, like something that electric cars really can't be very well yet.
That's interesting. Do you miss the 1 Series M ever?
Occasionally, like, but not significantly. Like, I would love to at some point drive the new M2 or even the 235, like that, like the M235. I would love to drive either of those, just because they do. By all reviews and accounts, they do sound like they're pretty fun little cars. I think that would be fun to drive those and to consider those if I couldn't have my big comfort boat. But ultimately, like I've gotten slightly older and a lot more boring, and I kind of just like my fast comfort boat now. So it's hard for me to really give this question an honest answer or honest consideration, because my head's not in that space anymore.
Yeah, that's fair. I drove an M235i, which is now an M240i, and it was really great. Like, I wouldn't say that there was anything tremendously remarkable about it. It was just a fun, small, a nimble car, which there's something to be said for that, right? It was really nice in that regard, and I had a lot of fun with it. All right, so moving on to. Well, John, do you have any comments on Marco's choices? Not to say that this was really designed to create an argument, but far be it for me to not give you a chance to respond. Any thoughts?
I was going to start by telling Marco what he should have bought anyway.
Okay.
In my answer, so the best non-electric direct replacement for his Tesla is the Panamera. It has a hatchback. The new version is not as ugly as the old one. It's really fast and fun to drive. It seats 4, which should be adequate for his needs. And yeah, I think he would end up there, because I think it is more exciting than the 5 Series. And shape wise, like it practically looks like a Model S at this point. So I think he would have a lot of fun with it.
They're still not good looking.
You got to see it in person. It's not. I think they actually are pretty good looking. I didn't. The old one obviously had the weird hunchback that wasn't nice. This is much more nicely proportioned, and when you see it in person, like the Model S, which I think looks kind of dowdy in pictures, when you see it in person, you realize it is lower and wider than you thought, and it has a nice presence in person. I know, because I see them all over where I live.
Yeah, I mean, looking at these on their website and everything, because I really have enjoyed a hatchback, I would give this a look, but I wouldn't feel good about it.
And everyone said like this behaves this is the least sedan like of all of the big sedans. Like everyone says, but
I like sedans,
Porsche SUVs. No, but I mean like in terms of not feeling heavy and like a boat, right? That it feels nimble and it feels like a slightly bigger Cayman. It doesn't feel like a souped up Cadillac or whatever.
Fair.
They're making it electric too, by the way. So Marco actually might be in the market eventually when their electrics come out, because they will actually have a direct electric competitor to Tesla, and that's another reason Marco will be in the Porsche dealership.
Well, and like their concept, like is it the Mission E? Their concept that was from like a year or two ago. That did look really cool, but it's just a concept, and it's who knows what will actually ship. And when it does ship, there's the big question of charging stations. Like Tesla has a lot of superchargers, and they keep adding more at a pretty remarkable rate. I know there's like the standard based networks that are also out there, but Tesla has a pretty big head start, and they're in a lot of places, and there are a lot of places that I go. Like they now cover upstate pretty well. Like they used to have very little coverage. Now they have great coverage. Like they're getting all over the place, and so anybody who comes in with a major long distance electric car competitor is going to have a pretty serious fight ahead of them to get past the supercharger network.
What you should be worried about, though, is when the hell are they going to replace the Model S? Because this always happens.
I am worried about that.
So it comes out in comparison tests where, like, one model that has won the comparison test for like 5 years running is at the end of its generation's lifetime, and it's about to be redesigned, and it comes up against the newly redesigned competitor and then loses for the first time. And so, yeah, the Model S is great, but you can't just keep the same car with minor interior and exterior tweaks for 15 years. You have to come up with the next version, and the next version has to be better. So presumably everybody who's targeting Tesla, they've got the Model S in their sights. They know what their benchmark they have to beat, and they're going to end up beating it, setting aside the charger network things. Tesla, but you would fully expect, okay, well, Tesla's going to beat it too with the next Model S, and we'll see how that goes.
I am very, very curious to see what the heck the next Model S is, because they've done a lot of things with the Model 3 that sound really good to me, and a few things that sound really bad to me. So I wonder, what are they going to carry over? Like the single screen thing? Nope, not for me. That does not sound good. The elimination of the auto steer cruise control stalk? Nope, don't like that. But things like having the one giant vent across the top and having the way faster, more responsive touchscreen, that sounds great. So there's things I like from the Model 3. We'll see what they actually bring over. I really hope they don't ruin it, because it seems like every Tesla model, they do like almost everything right, and one thing that's just like a dumb risk they took that didn't pay off, that ends up being annoying or failure prone. So like with the Model S, it was the stupid pop out door handles that fail constantly. With the X, it was the weird gull wing doors that cause them to have lots of delays and issues.
Falcon wings, please.
Whatever, yeah. And then with the Model 3, I think their weird risk they took was having just that one screen and having way too many functions rely on that one screen and like some menu there. So who knows what they're going to ruin with the next Model S? I just hope it's something I can tolerate.
So John's challenge, similar. If you had to buy something that wasn't an Accord, what would you buy?
Mazda 6, because it is about the same size, gets good reviews, comes with stick shift.
Okay, and I didn't know specifically what you were going to say, but I had a feeling it would be something along those lines. So now let's assume, for the sake of conversation, that a 2-pedal car is okay. Just for the sake of conversation, I'm not saying this is what you think. Would that change your tune? Would you choose something different?
No, if it's okay, no, I would never pick it over.
Okay, poor choice of words.
I'm not allowed to have a stick shift.
Let's go with that. Let's say you're not allowed to have a stick shift.
I think I would. I think I might find myself in the one Accord that I recently learned comes with an automatic. Not the CVT ones, but the one with the automatic.
Interesting. Okay.
Wait, is he allowed to pick an Accord?
Let's say no, actually. I didn't specify, but yeah, good point. Let's go with no, because let's make this more interesting. Get you out of your comfort zone.
God, I don't know, because like now we start getting to spending more money than I want to spend on a car.
Well, that's the next question. We're not there yet.
I know, but I'm trying to think of what's the cheapest non-disgusting automatic transmission car that it can fit my family that I would buy. I don't know. Does the Mazda 6 come with an auto? Maybe
sure.
I'll get that.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Erin had. She had a 2007...
Yeah, no, but the current model, though.
No, I know. I'm just saying, like, she had a 2007 Mazda 6 Grand Touring. It had darn near every option on it. It was an automatic, and it was a phenomenal car. It was a really, really, really great car.
Yeah, I think I would get the Mazda 6 with an automatic.
All right, so now some, African prince has died and bequeathed you all of his money, but it's actually legit this time. You have, $10 million with which you can spend on this car. What would you buy?
$10 million? Well,
I mean, you don't have to use all 10.
Can I spend part of that on the house to house the car?
Sure. Don't worry about your acorns.
I'm worried about it. I'm not going to buy a nice car and get ruined by my kids scraping their bicycle handles across it as I shove it into my little garage.
Don't worry about the acorns. Just worry about the car. Let's just presume that everything else is taken care of.
And you said I can't. No Ferraris.
No, I didn't say that yet. You're cheating. You're looking at the show notes. So in the show notes, it reads as follows: John has to buy one non-Accord. What would he buy? Next bullet. What if 2 pedals were okay? Next bullet. Okay, this is in the show notes. Okay, fine. Now money is no object and it has to be 2 pedals, no Ferraris. But let's start with the Ferraris, but even though we all know your answer, it's whatever the V12 is.
I was looking at the 488 again. I don't know, the 488 just hasn't grown on me as much as I thought it would. So I'm wondering if I would actually get a 458 or even a 430. Because I do like both of those cars better, but then I look at the interiors and they're all kind of weird. So I don't know. But like practically speaking, like I wouldn't, if you only let me have one car, I wouldn't get any of those because I can't like you can't drive that to work every day and carry your kids around in it and go on vacations and stuff. It's just not practical. It has to be like your second or third or fourth car, right? So when I'm back into 4-door sedans, then I think if I'm not, especially if I'm not allowed to get a new house.
No, just don't worry about the house. The acorns have gone away. Your kids will not touch the car.
But all right, so if it's only one car, I think I would end up with like an AMG E-Series, a Mercedes, because the S-Class, as much as I love it, I think it's just too big to be. I think I would like the E's better because the E's aren't that small these days. I feel like they're more or less Accord size. They're really fast, but also are comfortable and have lots of tech gadgets. I'm not even sure if I would get the AMG model. Frankly, I might actually end up with the non-AMG model if I felt like that was fast enough or the AMG one was squishy. But I really like the E's, and I feel like they're more to my taste, I think, than probably the M5. That said, I haven't really seen details about the new M5, so maybe they've adjusted a little bit. And I did like Marco's M5, but I just feel like all the bad vibes that you both give me about BMWs and repair bills and everything would go to the devil I don't know in Mercedes, I suppose.
But you would not get a wagon; you would get a sedan.
Yeah, I'll get a sedan.
Do you like wagons in principle?
I do. I just don't think I need one. Like we just have the two kids, and it's not like we're going camping. I do like wagons. I would get a wagon over a minivan any day, but I just don't feel like I need that extra space. So why would I get a wagon when I could just get a sedan?
Since I'm now a car journalist, I've been looking at
That's awesome.
I've been considering wagons more and more with each passing day. And even though as an American I'm supposed to hate wagons, there's something to be said for a fast wagon that has no business being as fast as it is.
So I'm configuring my Porsche Panamera.
Excuse me, it's Porsche, sir.
Don't pick the $20,000 option that gives you like a colored key fob.
The options that they give you are like there's like first of all there's like 90 different options. That's not an exaggeration, and it is ludicrous. Like I thought BMW was crazy with all the little nickel and diming for all the options.
Porsche is the king of options.
Oh my god! So among other things, I have the option to add a 6-disc DVD changer for
nice
$560.
Wow, that's cheap.
I can add a USB port in the rear for $420. That's just the port. I can add a fire extinguisher. I don't know where or how, for $180. Like I've never seen this many options. It's ridiculous.
I was watching a Demira video recently. I think he was talking about the 918 or something, but I think was it a paint color option that was $65,000? There was some option that was
smokes.
like a cosmetic option that cost more than most cars.
So I can get the air vent slats painted for $2,330.
I
do not like the look of this interior at all.
I bet the interior is very, very highly configurable. So
it is very highly configurable as long as you're willing to spend $2,000 to paint your air slats.
Like, yeah, no, that's just it. With Porsche, it seems like that if you want anything that's not stock, it costs such a huge amount of money that you're like, do they just buy the stock car and then take out the parts and burn them and then put in new parts? Like, why does it cost so much money?
God, there's so many options.
See, like
holy smokes.
Like and I mean, yeah, like the good thing is like I think John's right. Like if you want to customize, I mean, they have like 15 different wheels you can pick. Like there's so many options to this. And half of them I don't even understand what they would do or why I would want them. Seatbelts in chalk, $660.
Decorative valve stems in black with colored Porsche crest, $70.
That might be the cheapest thing on this entire list.
Oh my word!
Oh my god, it's amazing.
And this is starting at $150,000 for the Porsche Panamera Turbo Executive.
Oh, I didn't go to the Executive. I stopped at the 4S, which my configuration is $124,000.
Good grief!
And I haven't even gotten like good seats and everything.
I think there's like a game with the Porsche options that you want to get the one with the good engine, right? And then after that, you want to pick like 2 things that are important to you, and everything else just accepts stock.
I think the real answer here is you want to buy these used. Because, like, used cars, you tend to get a lot of the options basically for free. Because, like, you don't, if you spec up a car, like, the used pricing is based on not all the options. It's based on, like, the engine, trim level, year, and mileage. Like, that's about it. So, like, the way to get any of these cars, if you want a lot of options, is to just wait for a used one to come up that has a lot of options that someone else took a bath on, and you get those pretty nicely.
I think I mentioned this about like Rolls-Royce and Mercedes last time we talked about it, but I'm just so surprised that these companies stick to this. I mean, I suppose there is some attraction to the high-end clientele of being able to customize everything, especially like on Bentley and Rolls and stuff. But as Marco has noted in his salad power user diatribe, it's the paralysis of choice. Yeah. I would be terrified that I would be accidentally configuring the world's ugliest Rolls-Royce. Right, because you can choose everything, every material, every surface, every color, everything. It's like don't trust me to design it, especially if they have not so great visualization. It's like I paid $350,000 for this Bentley, and it looks like a clown car because I didn't think about how this color leather would look with this color stitching would look with this material. Because I'm not a car interior designer. Just give me some presets like Marco wants for his salads. And then maybe I'll say, give me that preset, and then they'll tweak one thing or something. Because, like, think of how scary, I think mostly in terms of how scary it would be to buy a car sight unseen. Like, you've never seen a car with this materials. You've never sat in it. You don't know what it's going to look like. You don't know how it's going to feel. And just picking from a menu, terrifying. So I wonder if rich people have, like, other people configure their cars for them. Right? Or they just say, oh, I don't know, you just make it nice for me. Or like they hire car interior designers, just like you hire them for your house. Like poor people, just go to the home center and they pick out materials for their floor and their countertops and whatever, and they cross their fingers and hope it looks okay. The rich people hire interior designer and, also cross their fingers, I suppose, but pay gobs and gobs of money for them to come up with materials and everything that look good together. So I wonder if they do that for cars too, because it's a huge expense and there's just too many choices.
Yeah, I'm looking now. Like, I would rather have just a regular 5 Series, I think, than the Panamera. You get so much more for the money, and it's a way nicer looking car, even though it does have a little bit of the skin flap issue of modern ones. But yeah, I think I'd rather have that.
Like, I found a new job for Casey. Casey, do you have any interest in being a car option configurer to rich people?
I would love to. Are you kidding? I would love
Wouldn't you feel the pressure, though, of not accidentally making an ugly car for them?
No. I really wouldn't. Because, they're rich. Who cares? They're just looking for someone to blame.
Well, yeah. Well, you have to charge your fee. It's like interior designers. You have to charge your fee, which should be like at least 1/3 of the price of actually doing the job. Purely for, like, what service do you provide? You tell them which options to pick.
I have long thought about how fun it would be to be like a car headhunter, if you will. So, take me, for example, when I was buying my 3 Series, I wanted a 335. It had to have a stick. It had to have the M Sport package. And I think there were 1 or 2 other options I insisted upon. Not white before either of you jerks pipe in. Anyway, the point is, I would love to be like a car headhunter. I would love to be a car headhunter that's, that my job is just like scour Auto Trader to try to find that like perfect unicorn for somebody. I think that would be super fun. But anyone who would have the money for that would be buying new anyway, so they would just order one.
I was saying, you just hang out. Like, I wonder if you work at the dealer and say, we have this person here. Their services are provided at a very small fee of $50,000, and they will help you select the options for your $250,000 car.
I'm in. If you're looking to hire me, you can find my contact information at caseylist.com.
Yeah, $50,000 per car. Like, you can make some good money doing that.
If only.
And honestly, if I had the money to buy a Bentley, I would gladly pay $50,000 to someone who would prevent me from misconfiguring my car and getting an ugly $350,000 Bentley. Instead, I'd have a good-looking $400,000 Bentley.